The rain fell hard on New Haven's makeshift hospital. Jake Morrison stood at the entrance, watching another transport vehicle arrive with more sick colonists. His uniform was dirty, and he hadn't slept in 3 days. The plague had taken nearly 400 lives already, and there seemed to be no end in sight. "Commander, we have 6 more critical cases," Dr. Claire Bennett called from inside. Her voice was tired, defeated. She had been working non-stop since the outbreak began 2 weeks ago. The medical supplies they brought from Earth were running out, and nothing they tried seemed to slow the disease. Jake walked inside, past rows of beds filled with dying colonists. Some were his friends. Others were families who had trusted humanity's promise of a new life among the stars. Now they were dying on a world that was supposed to be their fresh start. Children cried in their parents' arms. The older folks lay silent, too weak to make any sound. "Did the council respond to our latest message?" Claire asked, checking the vital signs of a young girl who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Jake shook his head. "Same answer as before. Non-interference protocols. They say we're too new to the galactic community to warrant emergency medical assistance. Something about not setting precedents for every minor species that faces a crisis." Claire slammed her datapad down on the metal table. "Minor species? We're dying here. What kind of galactic community lets people die over bureaucratic nonsense? The kind that's been around for thousands of years and doesn't care about newcomers," Jake said bitterly. Humanity had been so excited when they made first contact 5 years ago. They thought joining the galactic civilization would bring wonders. Instead, they found indifference. The galaxy had thousands of species, and humanity was just another voice in an already crowded room. 3 days later, a small ship appeared in orbit. It wasn't a human vessel, and it hadn't announced itself through official channels. Jake received the message directly on his personal communicator, which was strange because only council members and Earth officials had that frequency. "Commander Morrison, this is Ambassador Velnara of the Kasiri delegation. I request permission to land. I carry medical supplies that may help your people." Jake's hands shook as he sent the approval code. He didn't know what to expect. The Kasiri were one of the older species in the council, known for their diplomatic skills but not for breaking rules. 10 minutes later, a figure in a long gray robe walked down the landing ramp of a small shuttle. Velnara was tall and thin, with silver skin that caught the light in unusual ways. Her large, dark eyes seemed kind, something Jake hadn't seen from many aliens. She carried 2 large containers that hummed with some kind of cooling system. "Ambassador, I don't understand," Jake said, as he helped her carry the containers toward the hospital. "Your government voted against helping us." The Kasiri representative at the council was one of the strongest voices for non-interference. Velnara's face showed something that might have been a smile, though Jake wasn't entirely sure. "My government did vote that way. Yes. I did not. I believe compassion needs no permission from bureaucrats." Claire met them at the hospital entrance. Her eyes widened when she saw the containers. "Are those medical supplies?" "More than that," Velnara said, opening the first container. Inside were vials of blue liquid that glowed faintly. "This is a broad-spectrum antiviral agent. My people developed it 300 years ago during our own plague. It should work on your biology. I've studied human medical data extensively." "Should?" Claire picked up one of the vials carefully. "I am 94% certain," Velnara said. "I ran the simulations myself, but I could not test it without alerting my superiors." "You will need to make the final decision, Doctor." Claire looked at Jake, then at the rows of dying people behind them. 94% is better odds than we have now. How do we administer it?" For the next 18 hours, Velnara worked alongside Claire and the human medical team. She showed them how to prepare the treatment, how to adjust the dosage for different body weights, and how to monitor for side effects. The ambassador never rested. She moved from bed to bed, checking on patients, answering questions, and offering encouragement in her careful, formal way of speaking. The little girl Claire had been treating was among the first to receive the medicine. Jake watched as color returned to her face. Her breathing became easier. By the next morning, she was sitting up and asking for food. Across the hospital, the same miracle repeated itself. The dying began to heal. By the third day, the plague was broken. New infections stopped. The sick recovered. The hospital that had been filled with death now echoed with laughter and relieved tears. Jake found Velnara in the corner of the building, preparing to leave. "You saved us," he said simply. Velnara folded her long hands together. "Because it was right. Because watching people die when you have the means to help them is a choice I could not make, regardless of what my government commanded." "This will cost you, won't it?" Jake asked. "Coming here against orders. Almost certainly. I will likely be removed from my position. Perhaps exiled. The Council does not appreciate those who act independently, even for moral reasons." She paused, looking around at the recovering colonists. "But these lives are worth more than my career." Jake felt something burn in his chest. This alien, this stranger from a species that had voted to let them die, had risked everything to save them. "What can we do to repay you?" Velnara touched his shoulder gently. "Remember that not all of us are cold. Remember that compassion exists, even in a galaxy that often seems to have forgotten it. That is enough. Come to us. Come to yourself. Come to yourself. Gone to yourself." As her shuttle lifted off, Jake stood with Claire and watched it disappear into the sky. The rain had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds for the first time in days. "I'm putting this in the official record," Jake said. "Every detail. What she did, what she risked, what she gave us." Claire nodded. "The colonists are already calling it the Velnara cure. I don't think anyone here will ever forget her name." Jake pulled out his datapad and began typing. In the official colony log of New Haven, he created a new entry with the highest priority marking. He listed every person who had been saved, every action Velnara had taken, and every word she had spoken. At the end, he added a single line that would be read by every human who ever accessed the colony records. "Humanity never forgets its friends. This debt will be repaid." 2 weeks later, they received word that Velnara had been stripped of her position and exiled from Kasiri diplomatic circles. The Council had issued an official statement disavowing her actions. She was sent to live on a remote settlement on the edge of Kasiri space, forgotten by her own people for the crime of showing mercy. But Jake Morrison made sure her name was not forgotten by his. 51 years had passed since the plague at New Haven. The small, struggling colony was now a thriving world with 3 major cities and a population of 2 million. Humanity had grown from a newcomer species into one of the significant powers in the galaxy. Their ships traveled hundreds of systems. Their diplomats sat on important council committees, and their military was respected, if not feared. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UHCS Vigilance, reviewing reports from across human space. He was a tall man, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. On his desk sat an old photograph, worn at the edges from decades of handling. It showed a little boy in a hospital bed, thin and pale, being examined by a silver-skinned alien woman in gray robes. Marcus had been 7 years old when the plague hit New Haven. He remembered the fever, the pain, and the certain knowledge that he was dying. He remembered his mother's tears and his father's desperate prayers. And he remembered the alien woman who had appeared like magic and made the sickness go away. "Admiral, Captain Ortega is here to see you," his aide announced. Lisa Ortega entered the office. She was the head of a very specific division in human intelligence, one that most people didn't know existed. She carried a data pad and had the expression of someone bringing important news. "Monthly report on the Kasiri situation," she said, taking a seat across from Marcus. "Subject Velnara remains in good health. She lives in the settlement of Kira's Rest on the 4th moon of Kasiri Prime, population 4,000. She works as a teacher for young children. No signs of illness or danger. Local authorities continue to treat her with respect despite her exile status. Marcus nodded, reading through the detailed report. It contained information about Velnara's daily routine, her health scans from the local medical center, the condition of her home, even what she had eaten for dinner 3 nights ago. Some might call it surveillance. Marcus called it watching over a friend. Any changes in Kasiri government attitude toward her? He asked. None. She's been officially forgotten by her people. They don't persecute her, but they don't acknowledge her either. She's just an old exile, living out her days in obscurity. Lisa paused. Admiral. She has no idea we're monitoring her welfare. She believes humanity forgot about her decades ago. Marcus set down the datapad. That's probably better. She wouldn't want the attention. But make sure the monthly aid packages continue. And keep them untraceable. Already done. The packages arrive through 3 different intermediary species. There's no way to connect them to us. She probably thinks she has a secret admirer in the settlement. This had been going on for 51 years. Every month, Velnara received supplies, medicines, and small luxuries that made her exile more comfortable. Every week, human intelligence checked on her safety. Every day, someone in human space was making sure she was okay. It was an enormous expenditure of resources for one individual. But no one in the human government had ever questioned it. Lisa stood to leave, then turned back. Sir, there's something else you should know. Director Palmer wants to see you about the Velnara Protocol. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The Velnara Protocol was a classified directive that existed in the deepest levels of human military and diplomatic planning. It had been established 20 years ago, and updated constantly. Simply put, it stated that any threat to Velnara's safety would trigger an immediate and overwhelming human response. Greg Palmer was waiting in the conference room. He was the head of the Human Diplomatic Corps. A heavy man with a kind face and the shrewd eyes of someone who had negotiated with dozens of alien species. He had been a teenager on New Haven during the plague. Marcus, he said, shaking the Admiral's hand. We need to talk about what might be coming. Marcus sat down. The Vraxian situation. Exactly. Our intelligence suggests they're preparing for major expansion. They've been building their fleet for 5 years. And every analysis says they're going to move soon. The question is, where? And you think it might be Kasiri space? Greg pulled up a star map. The Kasiri are peaceful, technologically inferior, and sitting on 3 systems full of resources. From a strategic standpoint, they're perfect targets. And if the Vraxians attack the outer settlements first. He pointed to a moon on the map. Kira's rest is in the direct path. Marcus felt cold rage building in his chest. Has the council been informed? Then. Yes. They're discussing sanctions and diplomatic pressure. The usual useless nonsense that takes months and accomplishes nothing. By the time they make a decision, the Vraxians could have conquered half of Kasiri space. What about the Kasiri government? Are they preparing defenses? They've asked for council protection, but you know how that goes. Lots of promises, no action. They don't have a real military. They've relied on council peacekeeping for generations. They're not ready for a species like the Vraxians. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an old woman who had saved his life was teaching children and living in quiet exile, unaware that an army might be coming to destroy everything she loved. I need to speak with President Warren, he said quietly. I already arranged the meeting, Greg said. She's expecting us in an hour. President Helen Warren was a woman who had built her career on being direct and making hard decisions quickly. She had been elected on a promise to make humanity stronger and more respected in the galaxy. She listened to Marcus and Greg's report without interruption, her face showing nothing. How certain are we about the Vraxian target? She asked. 70%, Lisa Ortega said. She had joined the meeting to present the intelligence data. They've been conducting surveillance flights along the Kasiri border. Their fleet movements suggest they're staging for an attack within the next 6 months. Warren looked at the star map for a long moment. And if they attack, this woman, this Velnara, she'll be in danger. Almost certainly, Madam President, Marcus said. The outer settlements would be hit first to demoralize the Kasiri before the main assault on their core worlds. Warren stood and walked around her desk. She picked up a datapad and scrolled through something. Marcus recognized it as the New Haven colony records, the official account of what Velnara had done all those years ago. I was 12 when this happened, Warren said softly. I lived on Earth, but I remember when the news reached us. A colony of 10,000 people, dying of plague, abandoned by the galactic community, and one alien who defied her entire government to save them. She looked up at Marcus. You were one of those children, weren't you? Yes, Madam President. How many others serve in our military now? 127 ship captains, Lisa said immediately. 416 officers of various ranks. Thousands of enlisted personnel. The plague affected nearly 3,000 people directly. Most survived because of her cure. Many of them joined the service afterward. We call ourselves Velnara's children. In informal channels, Warren set down the datapad. Find me every ship we can spare. Contact every ally we have. Call in every favor that's owed to us. If the Vraxians want to threaten that woman, they're going to find out what it means to make an enemy of humanity. Madam President, Greg said carefully, mobilizing our fleet for a species that isn't even our ally will raise questions. The Council will demand explanations. Warren smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. Then we'll give them one. We're paying a debt. That's all they need to know. Marcus felt something settle in his chest. I'll begin preparations immediately. Good. And Marcus? Warren looked at him directly. Make sure she knows. Before this starts, make sure Velnara knows that we never forgot what she did for us. 2 weeks later, a message arrived at a small house on a distant moon. Velnara read it 3 times, her hands shaking. It was simple and direct. You saved our children when no one else would. Now we save yours. Humanity has not forgotten. We will never forget. The Vraxian Empire had been expanding for 200 years. They were a warrior species that believed strength determined who deserved to exist and who didn't. Their leader, Warlord Korseth, commanded a fleet of 1,200 warships and had conquered 17 star systems in his lifetime. He sat in his throne room aboard his massive flagship, reviewing the plans for his next conquest. The Kasiri will fall within a month, his general reported. Our scouts confirm they have no significant military. Their defensive satellites are outdated. Their ground forces are barely trained security personnel. It will be less a battle, and more a harvest. Korseth looked at the holographic display showing the Kasiri systems. 3 worlds, 14 moons, all rich in resources his empire needed. The Kasiri themselves would make decent workers once they learned their place. It was perfect. What of the Council? He asked. They issued a statement condemning our border violations. The usual empty words. Several species have proposed sanctions, but the vote won't happen for months. By then, we'll already control the territory. The Council will accept it, as they always do. They prefer paperwork to action. And the humans? The general hesitated. They've been moving ships toward the sector. We're not sure why. They have no treaty with the Kasiri. No trade agreements of significance. No strategic interest in the region. Korseth dismissed it with a wave. The humans are always moving ships somewhere. They're a young species trying to look important. Ignore them. Begin the attack sequence. I want the outer settlements crushed first. Show the Kasiri what happens when someone stands in our way. 3,000 light-years away, General Rick Hayes stood in front of a massive tactical display, showing the entire human fleet. He was a broad-shouldered man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had fought in the border wars, the merchant conflicts, and a dozen smaller engagements, but he had never commanded an operation like this. We have 847 ships ready for deployment, his operations officer reported. That's every capital ship we can spare, without leaving our core systems undefended. Transport vessels are loading Marine battalions as we speak. Supply lines are established. We can maintain operations for 6 months before needing resupply. Rick studied the positions. That's the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled in one place. Yes, sir. It's more than we used in the border wars. We're pulling ships from patrol duty across 50 systems. Every admiral who can fly is being activated. Every reserve crew is being called up. If this goes wrong, we'll be vulnerable across our entire territory. It won't go wrong, Rick said with more confidence than he felt. What's the status on diplomatic communications? The Council is demanding explanations. 17 species have filed formal inquiries asking why we're mobilizing. The Galactic News Network is running stories about possible human aggression. Some species are getting nervous. Let them be nervous. What did the President tell them? Only that we're exercising our right to move our fleet as we see fit. She refused to give details. The Council is furious. Rick allowed himself a small smile. He had served with Helen Warren during the border wars. She had been a captain then, and he had been a young lieutenant. He knew how her mind worked. She was making everyone anxious on purpose, keeping them guessing. When the truth came out, it would hit harder. At the Kasiri homeworld, panic was spreading through the government halls. Prime Minister Kelmos, an elderly Kasiri with fading silver skin, stood before the council chambers, addressing his people through a live broadcast. "We have petitioned the Galactic Council for protection," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We have been assured that peacekeeping forces will arrive within 8 weeks. We ask all citizens to remain calm and trust in the galactic community." 8 weeks. The intelligence reports said the Vraxian attack would come in less than 3. Kelmos knew the truth. Even if he couldn't say it publicly, the council wasn't going to save them. By the time their bureaucracy finished debating, the Vraxian flag would be flying over every Kasiri world. His aide approached quietly. "Prime Minister, we've received a strange message from human space. It's addressed to a civilian named Velnara. Should we forward it?" Kelmos felt a pang of shame. Velnara. He had been a young diplomat when she was exiled for helping the humans. He had voted for her exile, believing then that following the rules mattered more than individual conscience. Now, facing extinction, he wondered if she had understood something his people had forgotten. "Yes, forward it. And find out where she is. I want to speak with her." On the 4th moon of Kasiri Prime, Velnara sat in her small garden reading the message for the 100th time. She couldn't believe it. The humans had remembered. After all these years, they had remembered what she did. And now they were coming to help her people. She thought of those desperate days on New Haven, watching children die while their parents begged for help that never came. She remembered the weight of choosing between her career and her conscience. She had made her choice then, and she had lived with the consequences. She had never expected anything in return, but humanity had kept count. They had tracked her for 50 years. They had watched over her, without her knowing. And now, when her people faced the same destruction she had saved humans from, they were coming to repay the debt. Her communicator chimed. It was a government number, one she hadn't seen in decades. "Ambassador Velnara," a voice said, using her old title. "This is Prime Minister Kelmos. I need to speak with you urgently about the humans." Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship as it entered slip space, leading the human armada toward Kasiri territory. Around him, 846 other ships made the jump, the largest military movement in human history. Every captain knew why they were going. Every crew member understood the mission. "Sir, we're receiving a message from the Vraxian flagship," his communications officer said. "Warlord Korseth wants to speak with you." Marcus nodded. "Put him through." The holographic display showed a massive reptilian creature covered in scars and battle armor. Korseth looked at Marcus with eyes that held nothing but contempt. "Human Admiral," the warlord said, "you are entering a combat zone. The Kasiri systems are claimed by the Vraxian Empire. Leave now." or be destroyed with them. Marcus stood straight, meeting those cold eyes with his own steady gaze. Warlord Korseth, you stand at the border of a people who once showed humanity mercy when the entire galaxy turned their backs on us. One of their citizens gave up everything to save our children. We are those children. Grown now, and we have come to return the favor. Korseth laughed, a harsh sound. You would risk war with my empire over a species that exiled the very person you claim to honor? The Kasiri threw away their hero. Why should you care what happens to them? Because she cared about us, Marcus said simply. That's enough. Then you are fools. My fleet will crush you along with these worthless Kasiri. You cannot win. Wave cleanses. And when you are my Melant, Marcus looked at something off-screen, then back at Korseth. We don't need to win. We just need to make sure you lose. Every ship in this fleet is crewed by people who owe their lives to a Kasiri woman who defied her government to do what was right. We will protect her people with everything we have. If you want them, you'll have to go through us first. Korseth's eyes narrowed. So be it. Let this foolish gesture be humanity's grave. The transmission ended. Marcus turned to his crew. All ships, battle stations. Send a message to every Kasiri settlement. Tell them, help has arrived. Tell them humanity pays its debts. The human fleet arrived at the edge of Kasiri space, like a wall of steel and fire. 847 warships spread across the system in a defensive formation that military historians would study for generations. Every ship was positioned to protect a Kasiri settlement. Every weapon was charged and ready. Every crew member knew exactly what they were fighting for. Captain Dan Rivers commanded the destroyer Swift Justice, positioned above the moon where Velnara lived. He was 43 years old, and he had been 6 when the plague nearly killed him. His sister had died before the cure arrived. He had her picture on his command console. Captain, we have visual on the settlement, his navigator reported. Population 4,200. Defenses are minimal. One emergency shield generator that might last 10 minutes against serious bombardment. Dan looked at the small collection of buildings on the moon's surface. Somewhere down there, an old woman was probably looking up at the stars, seeing the human ships that had come to protect her. Not on my watch, he said quietly. Helm, position us directly between the settlement and any approach vector. If anything wants to hurt those people, it goes through us first. Across the system, similar scenes played out. Commander Amy Stone, who had lost her father to the plague, positioned her cruiser above a Kasiri farming colony. Captain Victor Lane, whose mother had been saved by the cure, took station above a mining settlement. Every ship had a story. Every captain had a reason. Admiral Marcus Chen watched the tactical display from his flagship. The Vraxian fleet was approaching fast, 1,200 ships against humanity's 800. The numbers weren't in their favor, but numbers had never been what made humanity dangerous. Sir, the Kasiri government is hailing us, his communications officer said. Prime Minister Kelmos wants to thank us personally. Well, tell him we'll talk after we've won, Marcus said. Right now, we have work to do. All ships. This is Admiral Chen. You know why we're here. That woman down there saved us when we were helpless. She gave up everything to do it. Today, we show her and the galaxy what it means when humanity remembers. The first Vraxian ships entered weapons range. They came in fast and aggressive, the way predators attack prey they don't respect. Korseth had split his fleet into strike groups, each targeting a different Kasiri world. He clearly expected the humans to scatter, trying to defend everything and protecting nothing. He was wrong. All vessels, fire at will, Marcus ordered. The space between the fleets exploded with light. Human railguns launched projectiles at incredible speeds. Missile batteries released swarms of smart weapons. Energy beams cut through the darkness. The humans had spent 50 years building their military, learning from every species they encountered, taking the best technology and improving it. Now they showed what they could do. The Vraxian vanguard hit the human line like a wave crashing against a cliff. And like a cliff, the human ships didn't move. They stood their ground, absorbing damage and returning it tenfold. Ship for ship, the humans were outgunned. But they fought with a precision and coordination the Vraxians couldn't match. Target their command carriers, Marcus ordered. Take out their coordination, and the rest will fall apart. Captain Lisa Ortega, now commanding a heavy cruiser, led a strike group directly at a Vraxian command ship. Her vessel took heavy fire, shields dropping to 30%. Hull breaches on 3 decks. She didn't slow down. "Ma'am, we can't take much more of this," her tactical officer warned. "We don't need to take more," Lisa said calmly. "We just need 10 more seconds. Helm, full power to forward momentum. All weapons, concentrate on their bridge section." Her ship, the UHCS Retribution, slammed into the Vraxian formation like a hammer. At point-blank range, her weapons tore through the command carrier's shields. The massive enemy ship shuddered, tried to return fire, then went dark as its systems failed. All across the battle space, human ships pressed their advantage. They fought with an intensity that surprised the Vraxians. These weren't soldiers protecting territory or resources. These were people protecting something sacred. Every human in that fleet was there because someone had shown them mercy once, and they would rather die than let harm come to her people. On the moon's surface, Velnara stood outside her home, watching the battle in the sky. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers among the stars. Ships maneuvered in patterns too fast for her old eyes to follow. She had lived a long life, seen many things, but she had never seen anyone fight like this. Not for territory, not for profit, but for the simple reason that she had helped them once. Tears ran down her silver face. She had thought her choice meant nothing to anyone but herself. She had accepted exile as the price of following her conscience. She never imagined that those children she saved would grow up remembering her name, that they would cross the galaxy to stand between her people and annihilation. "Velnara," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Prime Minister Kelmos, who had traveled to the settlement to see her in person. "I owe you an apology. We exiled you for doing what was right. We chose rules over compassion. And now, strangers fight to save us because you showed them what we forgot." Velnara looked back at the battle. "They're not strangers, Prime Minister. I knew them when they were children. Dying children who needed help. I gave them what I could, and it seems they grew up to be exactly the kind of people I hoped they would be." In space, the battle was turning. The Vraxians were fierce warriors, but they had never faced an enemy that fought like the humans did. Every time a human ship was damaged, 2 more would move to protect it. When the Vraxians tried to break through to attack the settlements, they found walls of human vessels willing to sacrifice themselves to stop them. Warlord Korseth watched his tactical display with growing disbelief. He was losing. His fleet outnumbered the humans. But numbers meant nothing against this level of determination. His ships were fighting for conquest. The humans were fighting for something else entirely. Something he couldn't understand. "Pull back," he ordered. "Reform the line. We'll regroup and attack from a different angle." But there was no different angle. Every approach to every Kasiri world was blocked by human ships. They had spread their fleet thin to protect everything, which should have made them vulnerable. Instead, it made them impossible to get past. No matter where the Vraxians attacked, they found humans who would not move. "Sir, we've lost 40% of our fleet," his second-in-command reported. "The humans have lost 30% of theirs. But they're not retreating. They're reinforcing every position. If we continue this assault, we'll lose everything." Korseth slammed his fist on his throne. He had conquered 17 systems, destroyed dozens of species, and built an empire on the principle that strength determined everything. But he had never encountered a species that measured strength this way. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to protect something they valued more than victory. "General retreat," he finally ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. "We withdraw to our border. This battle is over." Admiral Marcus Chen watched the Vraxian fleet turn and run. His own fleet was battered and bloodied. 23 ships completely destroyed, hundreds more damaged, thousands of casualties. But not a single Kasiri settlement had fallen. Not one. "Sir, the Vraxians are retreating," his tactical officer reported. "Should we pursue?" Marcus shook his head. "No. Our mission was to protect these people, not to destroy the Vraxians. Let them go. They've learned what they needed to learn." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The enemy has withdrawn. The Kasiri settlements are secure. Well done. All of you. Your parents would be proud. I know I am." Then he opened a private channel to the moon's surface, to a small house in a settlement that would have been destroyed if humanity had forgotten. "Ambassador Velnara, this is Admiral Marcus Chen. The debt is paid." The aftermath of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. News networks broadcast images of the human fleet standing guard over Kasiri worlds. Diplomatic channels buzzed with questions and demands for explanations. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Everyone wanted to know why humanity had risked so much for a species they had no formal alliance with. Admiral Marcus Chen stood in the council chambers 3 days after the battle. Representatives from 200 species filled the vast room, all of them staring at him with expressions ranging from confusion to anger to grudging respect. The council speaker, a tall being from a species that had existed for 10,000 years, addressed him directly. "Admiral Chen, the council demands an explanation for your actions. You mobilized the largest human fleet in history. You engaged in combat with the Vraxian Empire. You did this all without council approval and without any treaty obligation to the Kasiri people. Explain yourself." Marcus looked around the chamber. He saw the faces that had voted against helping New Haven 51 years ago. The same species that had hidden behind non-interference protocols while human colonists died. The same bureaucrats who valued rules over lives. 51 years ago, a human colony faced extinction from a plague. He began, his voice clear and strong. "We begged this council for help. We were denied. You told us that we were too new, too insignificant, that helping us would set a bad precedent. You let us die." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The speaker tried to interrupt, but Marcus continued. "One person defied you. One Kasiri diplomat named Velnara brought us the cure. She saved 3,000 lives. She asked for nothing in return. She was exiled for her compassion. You forgot about her. We did not." He activated a holographic display showing the names of every person saved at New Haven. The list scrolled through the air, 3,000 names glowing in the light. These are the people she saved. Many of them now serve in our military. 127 of them commanded ships in the battle you're questioning. I was one of those saved. I was 7 years old and dying when she arrived. The chamber had gone silent. Marcus let them absorb that before continuing. For 51 years, humanity has remembered what she did. We tracked her welfare. We ensured her safety. We made sure she never wanted for anything. And when we learned that her people faced the same destruction she saved us from, we did what this council would never do. We acted. Kate Phillips, a human reporter who had been covering the story, watched the council session from the press gallery. She had interviewed dozens of the human crew members, heard their stories, seen the old photographs of sick children and the alien woman who saved them. Now she was watching one of those children, grown into an admiral, explain to the galaxy what humanity valued. "The council believes we acted rashly," Marcus said. "That we risked too much for too little strategic gain. You measure value in resources and territory. We measure it differently. One person showed us compassion when the entire galaxy abandoned us. That single act has more value to us than all your trade agreements and defensive pacts. We will always defend those who defended us, no matter the cost. President Helen Warren appeared on another display, broadcasting from Earth. Let me make humanity's position clear to the galactic community. We are not aggressors. We do not seek conflict, but we never forget those who stand with us when others won't. The Kasiri now have humanity's full protection, not because of treaties or strategic interests, but because one of their citizens proved that compassion exists even in a cold universe. That's worth more to us than anything else. On the Kasiri homeworld, something unprecedented was happening. The entire Kasiri government, from the Prime Minister down to local representatives, had gathered at a public ceremony. At the center stood Velnara, confused and overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Prime Minister Kelmas approached her, carrying a ceremonial medallion that hadn't been awarded in 3 generations. Ambassador Velnara, we exiled you for breaking our rules. We punished you for showing the compassion that defines our species at its best. We forgot you while the humans never did. Today, we restore your position, your honors, and our deepest apologies. He placed the medallion around her neck. The crowd of Kasiri citizens erupted in cheers. Many were crying. They had watched the human fleet fight for them, watched ships sacrifice themselves to protect Kasiri settlements, and they had learned the reason. One of their own, exiled and forgotten, had been the seed of all that loyalty. Admiral Marcus Chen attended the ceremony via holographic projection, along with dozens of other human military officers. When Velnara looked at his image, she saw the little boy she had treated so long ago, now a man who commanded fleets and spoke for his people. Admiral Chen, she said softly, her voice shaking. I never expected anything. I did what I did because it was right, not for recognition or reward. We know, Marcus replied. That's exactly why we remembered. You showed us that doing the right thing matters more than following orders. Every human child learns your name in school now, Ambassador. You're part of our history, our culture, our values. You gave us more than medicine. You gave us an example of what we should be. The Kasiri government announced a permanent alliance with humanity that same day. Trade agreements, military cooperation, cultural exchanges, all of it formalized in treaties that would last generations. But everyone knew the real bond was simpler and deeper. One person had shown compassion, and an entire species had remembered. 3 months later, humanity held a ceremony of their own. In orbit above New Haven, a new ship was being commissioned. It was a battle carrier, one of the largest ships in the human fleet. The vessel gleamed in the light of the system's star as Admiral Chen stood on the bridge for the dedication. This ship carries a name that every human knows, he said, his words broadcast across human space. It represents what we value most, not weapons or power, but the memory of kindness shown when we had nothing to offer in return. I hereby commission the UHCS, Velnara's gift. Appin. Back on New Haven, now a thriving world with millions of inhabitants, a monument was unveiled in the central plaza. It showed a tall, silver figure in flowing robes, her hand extended in a gesture of offering. At the base, a simple inscription read, "She stood alone, so we could stand together. Velnara of the Kasiri, savior of New Haven, friend of humanity." Velnara herself attended the dedication, traveling to the world she had saved so long ago. She walked through streets named after her, saw children playing in parks built in her honor, met the grown adults who had been dying children when she arrived. Many of them were now parents themselves, teaching their own children about the alien woman who showed them what real courage looked like. That evening, she stood with Marcus Chen on the balcony of the governor's residence, looking out at the city that existed because she had defied her government's orders. "I still don't understand," she said quietly, I saved one colony. You mobilized your entire fleet. The cost must have been enormous. Marcus smiled. Ambassador, you taught us something that day. You taught us that sometimes, one person's choice to do the right thing matters more than all the rules and protocols in the galaxy. We built our entire culture around that lesson. Every ship that fought, every person who served, they all knew they were protecting something precious. Not territory or resources, but the proof that compassion exists. He gestured to the city below, where lights were beginning to glow as night fell. This world exists because you cared. Our alliance with your people exists because you cared. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy learned something from watching us fight for you. They learned that humanity remembers its debts, all of them, forever. Kate Phillips released her final report on the story that night. It spread across the galactic networks, reaching billions of beings on thousands of worlds. The image that accompanied it showed an elderly Kasiri woman standing beside a human admiral, both of them looking at a monument dedicated to a simple act of compassion that had changed the course of galactic history. The report ended with a quote from a human diplomat speaking to a skeptical alien council member. You want to know what makes humanity dangerous? It's not our weapons or our ships. It's that we never forget. Not our enemies, and never, ever our friends. Cross us, and we'll fight you. Help us, and we'll move the stars to protect you. That's not a threat or a promise. It's just who we are. In human schools across the galaxy, children learned about Velnara alongside other heroes of human history. Her name became synonymous with courage and compassion. Parents told their children her story to teach them about doing what's right even when it costs everything. Soldiers swore oaths that included her name, promising to honor her example, and on a small moon in Kasiri space, an old woman sat in her garden, no longer in exile, no longer forgotten. She watched the stars where human ships still patrolled, protecting her people not because they had to, but because they chose to. Because 51 years ago, she had made the same choice. The galaxy remembered the battle, the massive mobilization, the political implications. But humanity remembered something simpler and more important. They remembered a woman who showed them compassion when no one else would. And they had proven that no act of benevolence escapes humanity's memory, and their fury, when protecting those they love, can truly shake the stars.